Evidence of murders by the military. Authorities say it now appears members of the Colombian army had 11 young men from Soacha near Bogota killed. Their bodies dumped in a mass grave near the Venezuelan border so these military officers could inflate their rebels killed statistics with their superiors. More than 24 army officers, including generals and colonels, have been fired for their alleged role in this growing scandal, tainting President Uribe's administration, which has received billions of dollars in U.S. funds to fight the guerrillas. The president, standing with the defense minister and the army's top commander, announced the firing of military officers following an investigation into whether army units killed civilians to present them as dead combatants to inflate their military success statistics. The president says negligence by top commanders could have allowed some of the lower-ranking officers to become involved in the killings with the help of hitmen or sicarios. We cannot allow the ability and good name of our army to be compromised, said the president, by the killing of innocent people. Defense Minister Juan Manuel Santos recently acknowledged that some high-ranking officers were pressuring soldiers to show proof of their success in combat, and the defense minister had ordered an investigation into unofficial military body count policies. This led up to Wednesday's firings. General Jose Joaquin Cortes is one of the 3 generals sacked. He says he's worked hard for the military and believes in the honesty of the troops who were under his command. I believe in the innocence of my soldiers, he said. It's not fair, and it hurts. I accept my firing with humility, but I would rather work to my retirement. But I realize I have no other choice but to go. General Paulino Coronado was also fired. He's asking prosecutors to let the investigation take its course to clear his name. I want the investigation to go into great detail to identify who is really responsible, he said. They have to make clear this to my family, my friends, and the media that I was not involved. General Luis Roberto Pico commanded 34,000 men in 6 brigades. He was also fired. He says that over his entire military career, he has never been accused of anything. The commanders who worked under him, he said, had the highest ethics. President Uribe says evidence against all of the military officers allegedly involved will be given to the Fiscalia. Last month, young men from Soacha were recruited from their homes near Bogota by men promising jobs. Now, 10 of those recruiters have been arrested. 8 have confessed it was all a plot to take the men to Ocaña, where their bodies were later found in a mass grave. Their families say some of their dead sons were dressed up in military uniforms that did not belong to them, proof, their families say, of something sinister. Their families say the men killed were never involved with guerrillas, even though the army reported them killed in combat. Let's get some insight into the bigger picture here with veteran international journalist Toby Muse. He spent many years covering the conflict here in Colombia. Toby, I know you've been following this one very closely. Was this a shocker? Was this a surprise? Or is this the kind of thing that's been brewing for some time?
Human rights groups have been complaining about this since at least 2005. There was one part of Colombia, Antioquia, where they said it was very prevalent. And it does seem at the moment that it was designed to inflate the army's kill rate.
What do you think is the response overseas, where, for example, the U.S. government is looking at this and saying, we're giving them a lot of money for Plan Colombia, and it looks like rampant corruption with the money that we're giving them to fight these guerrillas?
Well, I think that was actually the unspoken reason for what Uribe did today when he fired all these army officers. He's thinking about the general election in Washington next Tuesday, and if Uribe is facing a Democrat White House, House of Congress, and Senate, he could be in trouble when it comes to funding, military funding. I would remind you that Colombia receives $500 million a year from the U.S. government every year just to the security forces, the police and the army.
I know you've spent a lot of time actually going on missions with the military, covering from one end of the country to the other. In your dialogue with the different soldiers, have you ever seen an indication that this sort of thing could have been proliferating? You ever hear anybody talk about this? What's the soldiers' take?
No, from the soldiers, no. I mean, when you're with them, they're on their best behavior. And I've gone on trips with some soldiers who have been just excellent. You can tell they have excellent relations with the community. But they're showing you one side of the story. Now, you do hear this when you're on your own with the peasants, with the small farmers in certain regions. And they do talk about serious abuses. I mean, this is perhaps the most serious abuse you can imagine. An army whose role it is to protect society is actually possibly out there killing civilians.
Help me explain to the rest of the world the reaction that the Colombian people have had to this. What's the barometer out there on the street?
Well, it seems that this story, as I say, human rights groups have been talking for years about this phenomenon, but it seems that it was this one case from Soacha. I think it was so close to the country's capital that it's really shocked people, I think. And I think the president felt he needed to get in front of this, And I would remind you that the president himself, when he first was confronted with the story, said that these young men were going up there. They weren't going up there to pick coffee, was his exact phrase. He said they were going up there for criminal intent. Now, this raises the question of how much is in control, Uribe, of his own military?
So he probably didn't have the whole picture.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is becoming quite a frequent thing. Uribe was forced to admit that the police had shot at the indigenous marchers. He said that they hadn't, and then a video surfaced that they had an indigenous march in western Colombia. There was also the problems about that Operation Jaque, when he said that the soldiers did not use the Red Cross symbols, and then it revealed that it was.
Finally, Toby, and I'm sure you'd agree with me, it's important to point out that the entire Colombian military shouldn't be painted with one broad brush because of some bad apples. There are a lot of good people fighting for the cause here in the country.
No, absolutely, and I think you are seeing the human rights abuses down considerably of the military from what it was a decade ago.
Okay. Toby Muse, a veteran international correspondent, and we'll be seeing more from you in the coming weeks. As I understand, you're going to be taking us to see a special place in Huela.
Exactly, San Agustin.
Okay, we look forward to that report. Toby Muse. Now let's check some of the other stories making news today from Colombia.
The Colombian military has killed a major player in the FARC. The Omega Special Forces killed Alvaro Alfonso Serpa, a.k.a. Felipe Rincon, considered to be one of the FARC's top commanders, next to leader Alfonso Cano. He went to Europe back in 2000 for peace talks with the government, and since returning, disappeared into the jungle. The military says Felipe Rincon ran the FARC's illegal network of radio stations. In Medellin, disturbances at the National University and the University of Antioquia. The unrest went on for about 3 hours, closing nearby streets and highways. Riot police ended up driving onto the campuses to calm things down. The DAS seized nearly a dozen AK-47 assault rifles from an apartment in Cali. The guns belonged to a drug trafficking band. And a close associate of Don Mario, considered to be one of the biggest drug traffickers in Colombia, has been arrested. He goes by the alias of Tiburon, or the Shark. He was captured in a rural area of Tumaco, down near the border with Ecuador. The Shark was considered to be the #2 guy in the Los Rastrojos drug trafficking band.
Switching to entertainment news now, Shakira says she is pregnant, but her baby isn't coming by way of the store. The Barranquillera has not yet picked a name, but next year she says she will be giving birth to a brand new album, a labor of love. No specifics on when it's expected out. She says she does have plans to be a mom one day, but not right now. She's just too busy making music to make babies. I'm Brian Andrews at the RCN News Center in Bogota. We welcome your emails, your photos and videos anytime at rcnnewsinenglish@gmail.com. We're going to leave you today with a look at one of the hottest and most beautiful songs on the radio here in Bogota. It's by Fonseca, and it's called Arroyito. It's a song about how love is like a little stream, the water from which touches everything in your life and makes it beautiful. That's RCN News in English. We're bringing Colombia to the world.
Y se quedó, fue pa' llenarme de recuerdos. Amaneció y el gallo viejo que cantaba en la ventana hoy no cantó, pues tú no abriste en la mañana. Y hasta el viento se devolvió porque no estaba. Eres el arroyito que baña mi cabaña. Eres el negativo de la foto de mi alma. Eres agua bendita que crece en mi cultivo. Eres ese rayo